Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, my name is James and this is Career Insights. In this video, I thought we'd have a bit of fun and do 5 things I hate about project management. So let's jump into it. Number 1, your boss picking the subcontractor or contractor to work with. Now this could also be a consultant, could be an architect or an engineer, but the overriding theme here is that they've gone over the top of you or your team to pick this contractor. And there's equal opportunity or equal chance of this actually being a good contractor as well as it being a bad contractor. What I'm going to focus on here is the bad contractors, and there's a telltale sign of where they end up being bad contractors, and that's when they remind you every single time you meet them that they have a relationship with your boss.
Which is why somebody important thinks I belong here. So when you two figure out who the f*** I am, you can find me on the beach. See ya.
Did that really just happen?
You did, he slapped me.
Which is hugely frustrating, and it to me always rings alarm bells that they're going to be poor to work with. So this will tend to happen probably the second time that you meet them. So say first time you actually meet them with your boss, everything's fine, they're putting on their best picture to you. But then you meet them the second time, your boss obviously has stepped back and carrying on with their workload and isn't really involved in the projects on a day-to-day basis. You meet them on site and then they say to you in terms of that, oh, I've just been speaking to Steve, your boss, and how good your relationship is, or you've just been out on the golf course with him at the weekend. And all they're trying to get across to you is that, oh, I've got a good relationship with your boss, so I could give back some bad rapport to them. Now, which is unbelievably frustrating, and it's alarm bells that they are going to be someone poor to work with and probably going to be a thorn in your side going forward. Ultimately, they probably haven't got anywhere near as good a relationship as they're making out. If you're in this circumstance the first time, do not be afraid to have a chat with your boss to say, alarm bells, he keeps saying how much he's got a relationship with you as if it's some sort of power over you, because I'm sure they will immediately alleviate that stress from you that there isn't any particular relationship or they're giving back negative feedback about you on site. But to give a real example of this, I can remember years ago, we were very close to signing a contract with a contractor, but our boss fell out with their boss and there was just no way in hell we were going to work together. Now, because we were so close to signing a contract with them, our boss kind of came in with a remedy of, oh, but I found this contractor, like, let's use these guys. They're a bit more expensive, but we were running short on time to get onto site. So we kind of did like a 2-part contract, which is where we let the groundworks to a groundworker that we knew and had known the site and been working on it for a number of years. But the main contractor was going to take it on after that point, was new. And as soon as you met them, you thought, these guys are going to be really poor. Cut a long story short, within 6 months, we were sacking them and terminating the contract and getting them off site, and then finding another replacement to put in, which again cost us more money. So it's those types of contractors. As I said at the beginning, there's equal chance that they can be good, but there's always this telltale sign of when they're going to be bad. And it happens, like I said, for me it's happened about once or twice a year, and it's hugely frustrating when it happens because you kind of have that sinking feeling of, oh, here we go again. Being a peacekeeper. So a lot of project managers will tell you, and I'll tell you exactly the same thing, is that being a project manager is like being the hub of the wheel. So you're the center point, and all the other bits of information going round all being fed into you, which you then relay to other people. But a lot of project managers, including myself, will tell the team, so let's use the consultancy side of things as an example. So using an architect and engineer, I'll tell them in meetings that you can talk outside of me and I promote you talking outside of me. I don't need to be involved in every single minute detail between the two of you. So pick up the phone or drop emails to each other, CC me in, or if you're talking to each other, obviously I'll pick it up once I'm speaking to you the next day or two. But what can happen is that those consultants or subcontractors, whatever it is, fall out. And more often than not, it's a battle of egos that takes place, where the architect may think they're right, the engineer thinks they're right. Whatever it is, there's a complete clash of personalities.
Whoa, what are you doing?
This vermin speaks of affairs he knows nothing about.
And you will spend half an hour on the phone to both of them, trying to break the peace, trying to understand where it's gone wrong, where it's broken down, because ultimately you don't really care. You want to get the project done, but you want to appease the situation so that they can start communicating better to each other and stop winding each other up. So again, this probably happens to me maybe once a year, maybe twice a year. But whenever it does, it's that moment where you realise that you're going to have to be an agony aunt for the next hour just to smooth things over. Probably get a get-together on site in the next week just to smooth the relationship over. Probably try and translate to the other one of where the misunderstandings come together, and actually, come on, you've got to realise that you're in groove with each other. So one of the things that I often focus on when people do fall out is that, look, it's much better to work together from a financial perspective, because the quicker we get done, essentially the more money you're going to earn from getting it done quickly. But it is very painful that those moments come up, and as I said, they come up probably once or twice a year. But if you've got a particularly bad job, I'm sure a lot of project managers will say to you that once or twice a year, God, that happens once or twice a month for me. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. It's extremely painful having to be this agony aunt between two people not getting on over something normally very trivial. Number 3, recession. So one of the annoying things about construction is it tends to be one of the first industries into a recession and one of the last industries out of a recession. So you can kind of understand where this comes from. So think about it. Construction projects tend to cost millions. So when people are trying to make savings, they'll kind of cut any future construction projects they've got coming up. But what that means in terms of being in the industry is that, as you would have seen, that there's kind of been a recession every 10 years for about the last 30 or 40 years. So that means that every 10 years in your life, you've got this hugely uncertain period that you have to go through, which is, am I going to keep my job? I'm going to need to find a new job. Are you actually going to leave the industry altogether? And I think when you're younger, you kind of don't think about that, because when you're obviously first starting out in the industry, probably in your early 20s, you probably haven't got a family to look after. You might be living with your mum and dad. But as you get older, obviously, like, I'm nearly 35, and I'm sure people older than me, it's hugely frustrating or hugely stressful that when you've got things to pay for your kids, etc., that this keeps happening. It's also one of the reasons why wages have stayed relatively high in construction, is that obviously a lot of people leave construction when a recession comes and potentially don't come back to it. So what that means is that to attract new people into the construction sector, wages always seem, I think, higher than what other industries are, but it's because of this wave format that goes on in construction. So regardless, the point is, recession is very stressful, and construction, being one of those prime industries that gets hit the hardest, is very stressful. 4, difficult to unwind. So going back to my point earlier, where you're the hub of the wheel and everybody's feeding information into you, which you're then sending out to the right person. Obviously, when you take a break, you're bringing that out, and then people should be feeding information to each other, or you might have cover, but often the cover may be your boss or someone who's not involved maybe on a day-to-day basis of your project, and that also brings stress in itself, that they're not going to communicate the right processes. You do have handover meetings, but anybody who's in the industry will say to you that someone who's only half-heartedly looking after your job is never really going to do a proper job. So what I tend to do when I go away is that, well, firstly, it probably takes me 2 or 3 days to unwind when I go away, but I tend to read my emails in the morning. So my wife's really understandable. She lets me read my emails probably an hour in the morning, every morning when we're away, just so I can check whether anybody's making huge mistakes, that they decided that even though I've told them this is what we're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks, this is the goal, you always get someone with a bright idea that wants to do something outside the box. And just by checking every morning, you can see if someone's decided to go rogue on you while you're away. So to give you an example, years ago now, my boss was actually trying to do me a favour. He was trying to cover me when I was away, but he had a big idea that on his site, he had a lot of excess soil and he wanted to put that onto my site. And what he hadn't factored in is that on my site is that as we were building it out, we were kind of following the same philosophy as his site, which was we were stockpiling soil towards the back of the site because it was a multi-phase site, so we could afford to do that. So what he did, and what the mistake was that he looked at drawings for the levels of what the future site would be, but hadn't factored in, as I said earlier, that we were moving the soil to the back of the site, so actually our levels were far higher. So he ended up bringing soil from his site onto our site and made the levels even higher. And then to compound that, what happened was that our land team ended up selling that land onto another developer, which now meant that they were checking levels. And obviously, as soon as I got back, found out what had happened, I was like, the levels are already high as they are, you just made them even higher. So anyway, it compounded the issue. We obviously had to get rid of the soil, but in that situation, even though I was checking my emails every day, he decided to try and give me a break, not to actually CC me into that information, so I couldn't actually help and stop the issue happening. So that is one of the big issues with being a project manager, is that having time off can be extremely stressful in itself, just because you come back to new mistakes being made. Number 5, traveling. So traveling is a big part of being a project manager and a big component of construction. Obviously you can't dictate where your next project is going to be or where your next project your company is going to undertake. So that means that you've got to be flexible if you want to get on in your company. So there are some project managers that will jump from company to company and delivering like one project at a time. So think about it, some projects are very, very big. They could be over a 5 or 10 year program. So you can do it. But what I'd say is that if you're starting out, that's just not a feasible option. You kind of want to get a number of years under your belt with one company so you can kind of start climbing the ladder. But going back to the traveling component, is that like I look after multiple sites. So I will have my time split between driving to the office, driving to different sites. I could be going to consultants, I could be going to subcontractors, suppliers. So you're forever traveling around the place. I think in my entire time in the construction industry, I've had one project that has been within 20 minutes of where I live. Outside of that, the majority have probably been under an hour, and then maybe 20 to 30% have been over an hour away. Now that's obviously one way, so it's like a 2 to 3 hour commute. I think the worst situation I've had is that in the last couple of years I've done quite a lot of off-site construction, and in the UK the guys that do the off-site manufacturing tend to be based up north, and with me living in the southeast, that's very roughly about a 4 hour commute up to the north and then back again. So 8 hours in a day is a hell of a long day, which definitely takes it out of you. So you do get opportunities to listen to podcasts, but what you have to remember about being a project manager is that you obviously have to learn how to work on the move, so you're forever on the phone. So another component of traveling and being on the phone all the time is that I definitely like lose my voice quite a lot, and you definitely suffer with headaches just because of the amount of information you're processing and having to learn to work on your feet. So comparing that to office work, I can remember years ago, and like one of the admin secretaries in the office saying that she doesn't know how I do my job because you're never at a desk for more than an hour at a time. But that's just something that you'll quickly learn when you start project management, of how to do things on your feet. All the multitasking, all the traveling definitely takes its toll. You probably need a bit of a recoup at the weekend, ready to go again for the week. So there you go, there's my 5 things I hate about being a project manager. I hope you got some value from the video. I'm probably going to follow this up with the 5 things I love about project management. If you could give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, that'd be absolutely great. And I'll see you in the next one.